hope everybody's doing well today. I got a funny story that has nothing to do with this podcast, but I figured I'd share that with you. This morning I woke up, I got my workout in, took a shower, and I walked into my daughter's room and she's sleeping. Now I got 4 kids. She's number 3. She's 7. She's going to be 8 in a couple weeks. And she's sitting there just passed out, snoring like a log. And so I walked up to her very closely, and I'm just whispering all these sugary sweets into her ear. And she's sitting there and she starts moving. She starts taking her hand and like doing this with her fingers while she's sleeping. I full on was messing with my daughter's dreams. It was a riot. I was giggling so hard I started laughing out loud. I tried to get out of the room in time, and unfortunately I did wake her up. But yeah, the fun things you get to do when you be a dad, you get to mess with them. So today we're going to be talking about metrics, KPIs, measurements of how you scale your company and how you grow it, things that you look for. I use the word metrics. There's thousands of different ways you can answer this, but I like metrics the best. How am I measuring? How am I comparing? Somebody posted on those damn sign guys, what do you guys use to measure metrics? Now, this question comes up about once every 2-3 months, but I think it's an important question. It's a really good question. How do you guys measure it? There's only 2 things that I look for when I go to measure my company. It's very simple. There's only 2 questions. The first question that I ask myself is, what does the customer want? And how do I measure that? The second question is, what affects my bottom line the most? And how do I measure that? Those are going to be the biggest things that I'm going to be looking at. So let's dive into the first one. What do my customers want? Well, I'm building a garage on my property right now. And it got to the point where I have my stucco guys coming out. Now, I've never built a building from the ground up, so this is my first one. And I'm the GC because I frankly didn't trust any of my other GCs. So I'm the one who's finding the trades and organizing and coordinating. But for the most part, that's really all I'm doing as a GC because each trade is specific. And frankly, if I let them run, they're going to give the best product for me anyway. So I'm very happy being the GC. But here's the rub. I don't know what I don't know. So we get to the scratch coat, we put the lathe on, and then we have that first level where you get the big pile of sand, you put it in the machine, you mix it up. So it's basically almost like a concrete that sprays on them. So it's a stucco finish. They left all the chicken wire, a big gigantic mess in the corner, a pile of sand that they didn't use. I called them up and I said, hey, what is all this extra? He goes, oh, that's extra materials. You can have it. That's on us. You don't pay us extra for it. You can just keep it. And I started laughing. I said, no, you overbought for my job, which is fine. You didn't run out. But you can take that to the next job and get it off my property. I don't want it here. I'm not going to stucco another house. This is it. It's a one and done. And so they had to come back. They had to clean up. Am I looking at the stucco job are they doing? Or am I looking at the customer service that they gave me and the mess they made when they left? Sadly, I hate to say this. I'm looking at the customer service of how they left my job site. And I'm really not looking at the end product of their stucco. It's sad, but it's true. Their customer service left a bad taste in my mouth because of the way the job site looked at the very end. They didn't take care of me or think of it from my point of view. So, with that being said, I don't think I'm going to use them again. If I had another project, I'm going to go find another stucco company. How many times have you guys built a beautiful product, put it up on the wall, but left a mess inside on the rug or the interior in the receptionist area, or left a mess or some Coke cans out by the job site to the point where the client came back out and that's the only thing the client saw, and your install team deep six the relationship because they left the job site a mess? Has nothing to do with the quality of the product you gave. Has nothing to do with the longevity and how well it is. Has nothing to do with the creativity that it made it as beautiful as it is. We just screwed up at the very end of the customer service, so this left with them. So for me, as I'm building this garage, I'm taking notes on what I want, and then I'm applying that to my companies of what we're going to have to now give to the clients. So I want you guys to ask yourself, what do you want? Very basic question, right? Very simple question. What do you want? And are you giving that to your clients? That's the first metrics that I want to know. So I started asking myself, what do I want? Well, I want something fast. I want something that's going to be on time based on the schedule that they gave. I want good customer service. And I want a knowledgeable sales rep. So of course, Amazon screwed everything up, right? We want everything yesterday as soon as we order something. That's a given. The whole world's that way. It's done trying to fight it. It just is what it is. So yes, you got to have some speed. So if you're doing drawings and create an estimate for a custom product, that does take your company time, but you need to figure out how to streamline that part of the process because the customer doesn't see value in that. If you take 2 weeks to really think about it, does that really add value to the customer? If you could get to that customer inside of a couple days, that's the value. The customer gets to see it inside of a couple of days and they get to go, oh, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to see it. When they say sales in the first 4 hours of the thought is when they're going to get the most sales because they're excited and they want to buy it right then and there, that instantaneous gratification. But in our world, it does take some time to put together drawings, a price, think throughout all the variables that are going to happen, and then give an accurate, portrayal of what's going to go down. But we got to be able to streamline that. So metrics number 1 is how fast is the turnaround time from the time the client picks up the phone to where they have a proposal in their hand to sign. That's metric number 1. Metric number 2, how many of those proposals are being signed? That's a simple metric, right? It's a simple thing to do. How fast from the time that we open the project to the proposals in the client's hands? Now, we measure that all the time in SquareCoil. It'll say right inside the system with one click of a button, 4 days, 5 days, 7 days. It's very simple to tell us, and we can see our average time to turn around to the proposal. What are you guys using for that metrics if you're not using SquareCoil? I hope it's something. I hope you're measuring something because that customer service is what you're going to need. All right, let's move on to the quality of the product. We all know that's important. If it falls off the wall in the first year, if it, is not holds up to it, if the paint fades within the first year, no one's going to be happy. They're not going to want to go back. So you have a certain quality there. But the other metric that I like to measure is how fast does that client come back? Sounds like an odd metric, right? It sounds like an odd thing to measure. What do you mean when they come back? Well, when do they become a repeat client? And that metric I measured just off my sales team, because my sales team should be calling them up and saying, hey, it happened, job is done, it's complete, we're super excited, we're glad you have this. By the way, did you know that we do address numerals, interior signs? For me, since I own the signage company, I'm focusing on this industry. But what other upsells do your team give the client after the initial sale is done? That turns that client into a recurring customer. That's a metric that I would want to follow. I'm sure there's many more out there you can think of. This is just kind of get those creative brain juices flowing, so you understand that, hey, these are different things you want to measure. That's going to add to your customer base. You're going to get more market share. More market share usually adds to a better bottom line. And of course, we love a lot market share when there's a recession coming, which at this point in time, I feel like it's definitely coming. It's time. We have a correction coming, if anything. Hopefully not a recession, but a correction. But it is headed our way. The other question, what things add to our bottom line? Well, we had to give an estimate to the client, right? So now we pray that the shop knows what that estimate was and the estimate is somewhat accurate. Now, if you say, let's give an example. In our signage industry, we build channel letters. That's very basic sign that we send out. When you build the channel letters, you have cut the faces, cut the backs, bend the returns, or what we call the sides of the letter. Put the faces onto the returns, usually via trim cap or some other form. Populate them with LEDs, paint them if necessary, stage them up for quality control, send them out to the job site, and then go ahead and do the installation. If you gave your team the different departments, your 5, 7, 10 different departments, say you get 2 hours, you get 1 hour, you get 3 hours, is it accurate? If you only give them 1 hour and it takes them 4 hours, well, you're going to lose money because you base off 1 hour. So your estimator needs to be accurate. But at some point in time, your estimator is going to get pretty darn accurate. And now we're going to have a place to hold the line to the guys in the shop. It should take you 4 hours. Please only do 4 hours. And then at the end, let's see where you're at. Now, inside of SquareCoil, we have a labor analysis, very simple, one click of a button, and it'll show you estimated 4 hours took us 4.5. Estimated 5 hours took us 3 hours. And we can see when we're on budget. But one of the great measurements there is we can see if it was a one-time anomaly if they went over budget, or this is a consistent, they're going over budget every single time. If they're consistently going over budget, that's an estimator problem. If they're only going over budget every once in a while, that's an employee problem on how they're not building the sign correctly or not hitting the numbers. And you need to be able to decipher between the two of them. But that's a really good metric for you guys to look at. What other things do you want to see as an owner hitting your bottom line? I would say turnover would be a big one. Now, turnover, that's in every company. I remember back in the day when I worked in a lumber yard, they wanted to know how many days that stick of lumber is going to sit on that shelf before it got sold. On average, it was I think 109 days was their turnover of all the lumber inside of their lumber shed. For us, once a job is sold, how long before it gets put on the wall and turned into money? Well, that's a metric that I would like to know. On average, I think ours is, before COVID, it was 65 days. Now it's about 110, 120 days, thanks to the cities and municipalities and all the permits. So unfortunately, we do have some things that are out of our control that add to that turnover rate. But for those metrics, what's your turnover? How fast do you turn over that product, getting it back to the client? I feel like the longer the turnover rate, the more that client's going to get cranky because they feel they're not important. You ever sit there at a restaurant, you get sat down, and it's like 15 minutes before somebody comes up to you to get you a glass of water or to take your drink order? You don't feel important, do you? You feel a little cranky. Can you imagine if you sign a contract for X number of dollars and then you don't hear anything for 3 months? 3 months is 90 days. Our turnover is over 100 right now. So for 3 months, you don't hear a thing. Do you feel respected? Do you feel important? Probably not. Is that going to add to them being a repeat client? Definitely. So those metrics are something you're going to have to take a look at. Just some of the basics of what we're looking at, some of the basics of what we're talking about here. It seems really simple. What do you want? What do you want to give your clients? What do you want to measure to make sure your company is successful? It sounds very basic, but if I put it in front of you and say, go do that right now and bring me back some measurable metrics, you might stop and pause. I will admit that somebody asked me what my mission statement was for my software company, and I'm like, well, I know it. It's this. They go, okay, well, write it down on a piece of paper. And I actually never wrote down my mission statement. I had it in my head. I knew what I was aiming for, but I actually didn't write it down. So when we talk about this, it seems very basic. It seems like, duh, we know this. But go write it down and actually give yourself some metrics. I think you're going to find that's a little bit harder than we've been talking about. Aim for this. Aim for some metrics. You're going to grow on that one. Things that are going on. We are doing another big push for the software company in the next couple of weeks. Very excited about that. Our social medias are starting to grow quite a bit now. The AC Method, thank you very much for subscribing and signing in. SquareQuill starting to grow. And then if you ever get on aaronclipinger.com, the infrastructure booklet's here. Download it. Free piece of information for how to set up a good infrastructure for you guys to make even more money.